And in the event that the public is unable to access the meeting, we can adjourn the meeting and reschedule it. All the votes that we take during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And we will start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. And I will, just so we comply with the right to know law, just when I ask you to say you're here, please let us know if there's anyone else in the room with you. So having said all that fun stuff, I'll take the roll call. Let me start with Janet Kraseniak.
Janet Kraseniak, I'm alone.
Great. Norm Gupel.
Norm Gupel, and it feels great to be alone.
You must have young kids. Jonathan Cohen.
Here with all my friends.
John, you're on mute.
That means oh, I just unmuted myself.
Or we can't hear you anyway.
I can hear Jonathan.
Yeah, so can
Can
I.
you hear me?
Hearing him.
So I'm here and I'm alone.
Still can't hear you. So I'm gonna come back to you, Jonathan, okay?
Mark, I think you're the only one that
You
can't
have
hear
to
me.
work on your microphone.
We can hear him.
Yes, we all can hear
Thomas
him.
Lapoma.
Yeah, I'm here and alone,
Oh,
and I can hear.
okay. I got you. And Jonathan, sorry, can I hear you now? Can you-
Yeah, I'm right here, Mark.
Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe that was on my end.
I remain here and alone.
Okay. Don Houston.
Here alone.
Thank you. Ken Trom.
I'm here and alone.
Great. And at this point, Ginny Haynes is not here and unable to attend, and Rich Houston is not here at this point and perhaps will join us. Is that everybody? I think that's it.
Steve Reddy?
Oh, yes, thank you, Ken. Oh, and Steve Reddy looks like he is just joining, so let's give Steve a second here. And when his face pops up, we'll. All right. Hi, Steve. If you could just say your name and just let us know if there's anyone else in the room with you.
Steve Reddy, there is no one else in the room.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. And then if we could start with the pledge, and Norm, would you mind leading us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America
And to
and
the
to the
republic
republic
for which it
for
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Thanks, Norm. Appreciate that. Okay, so the next agenda item is to approve the minutes from September 9, 2020. So let me start by requesting a motion.
So moved.
Ken moves. Is there a second? I'll second it.
I'll second.
Norm, thank you. Okay, any comments, questions, suggested edits?
I just wanted to make sure, Tammy, you got the fire suppression spreadsheet that was added on that was missed from the first email.
It was added to the very end at just below my signature.
Okay,
It says additional information provided after the meeting because I'm not allowed to add things in between. So you
Got
had a whole page by yourself at the very end that had all the
Perfect.
information you sent to me.
you're the best. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Norm. Okay, any other comments or additions or edits to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna call the roll call here. Janet,
Janet approves.
Norm,
Norm Gupel approves.
Jonathan,
I will abstain since I was not here last time.
Thomas,
I approve.
Don,
I approve.
Ken,
Yes.
Steve,
Approved.
okay, and Mark approves as well. Thanks, Tammy, as always.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next item is the draft calendar for the Budget Committee and the Town and School District annual meetings. And I think this was sent out to everyone, but let me confirm. I hope that you all received that. And I guess, yeah, thank you, Neil.
Good.
Neil, would you like to take a minute to kind of step us through this?
Sure. It actually is pretty similar to last year. The only thing that is different is the locations, because we don't really know where they'll be. It puts probably starting from the back right here, it puts the town meeting on March 20th and the school meeting on March 13th. That's pretty much where they were last year. Well, it's not when they happened, but it was where they were scheduled last year. And everything else falls back from there. I don't think there's any changes. If you go back, it has the town presenting to, actually it has the Hopkinton Village and the Kentucky Village precincts presenting at the beginning of December, the first Wednesday, and the second and third Wednesdays of December, the town presenting. And then the school in January with the public hearing, which is where you need to have that. The public hearing is, I've lost it, but it's at the beginning. Oh, here it is. Sorry. It is February 10th, which gets everything done with us in time. The snow date would be the 11th, which is Thursday night. So either Wednesday or Thursday night.
Great, thank you, Neil. That's wonderful. So I guess I want to open it up to the committee. If you have questions or thoughts, you can just take yourself off mute, but it's also really helpful if you click on the participant. Which really works well is if you click on the participant button and then raise your hand if you have a comment or question, just because there's a bunch of us, and makes it a little bit easier. So Norm, go ahead.
Today in our finance committee meeting, Steve had said to me that it would be best for the school district to do its presentation on January 14th. He foresees us not having a agreed upon budget on January 7th. So he says they've never done that format in the past and wanted me to pass this on to the budget committee to recommend doing the second week in January if possible.
Okay. So just, Neil, if you wouldn't mind just popping that calendar up one more time, just so we can process that. Just take a look at that.
I was looking at it. I guess it doesn't work if I don't share it with you.
Okay, so you want to basically push it back a week, Norm? Did I get that right? You want to present it on the 13th rather than the 6th?
Correct, sir.
Okay, any?
That would just eliminate this one. And the school has
Right.
beyond that.
Right. Any comments on that proposal by Norm? And just again, raise your hand, or I guess you can take yourself off mute if the hand raising is too hard. Tammy, I think I'm going to have to ask you to wait till the public comment part of this, just to be kind of fair and transparent about how we do business here. Okay. Norm, I think you're good on that.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys understanding.
Mark,
Jonathan, are you waving your hand?
yeah, I couldn't raise it because we were doing screen share with Neil, so I couldn't get to my
Okay, go ahead.
hand raising, but now I can. And I apologize if this is already, if everybody already knows this, but I don't, like, when is Steve, who's the superintendent like January 1st? Is that still Steve?
Till June.
Through June of next year?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Janet,
I thought that the school budget was going to start a little bit earlier this year so that we wouldn't have to crowd into January, because we always seem to be so late into January and then to, for the public hearing in February. So have you started your budget yet, Norm?
Yeah, I was gonna get into that in the discussion later in the meeting, but I can tackle a little bit. We've been working on parameters of the budget process. Rob and I and Steve and Michelle. Tomorrow is a big meeting for the board where we'll be discussing some of that in public. That will be out there. But yeah, we're definitely have started working on it. Steve has directed his team, with certain requirements and stuff. But we are. It's a quick turnaround, Janet. We went from approved budget right to this one, but Steve asked for that date, to have all his ducks lined in a row and matches up with his calendar in order to have everything be thorough. But I understand, it's going to be an ongoing process earlier than I would say than it was in the past.
Okay.
Don,
To follow up on Janet's comment there, as I look at the schedule, this will give us only 2 meetings with the school, regardless of how difficult those discussions might be. Where we had 3 before and we were always asking for it to start earlier. This really lets it start later and limits it to 2 meetings. So that's a little concerning.
Norm, I wonder if you can just carry this back to the school board.
Absolutely.
We know that this is going to not be a simple budget year because both bonds are going to hit. And so I think it's in the school district's interest to have more time rather than less for some back and forth with the budget committee. And we can't have that until we have something to react to. So I think you and previously Jim and Bill and Steve have explained to us why it is hard for you to get too far down the road too early, because there is information that you are getting from the state and from other external sources that you just don't get until later in the fall, insurance providers, et cetera. And that's just a real constraint. It still stands that it's in everybody's interest for us to have more time for back and forth. So if it turns out that it is possible for you to come a little sooner or have any parts of this that you can share sooner, I think it will serve the public's interest.
You got it. I will relay the message to Steve saying that you kind of want to leave it as it is for the schedule, based on you guys wanted to be here sooner, so you guys have more time to digest it. I can give them that recommendation from you guys, and if there's any issue, I will let you guys know. But whatever the budget committee feels is necessary, I will relay it back to the school board and to Steve.
So I think, we should probably keep that January 6th meeting on the books for now. And then Norm, at our next meeting, you can maybe let us know. And if we can't keep it, we can't keep it. But it would be nice to aim for that if we could.
You got it. I will send that message back to the board. Thank you guys for your feedback on that. I appreciate it.
Anything else on the calendar? Okay. Thanks for that, Neil. Much appreciated.
No problem.
All right, we are going to switch over to Ken first for the town financials update, and then after that, we'll get into the CIP for the town.
Sure. Thank you. And I guess, Neil, if you could just put on screen share the financials, starting with the revenue summary page. Okay, this was provided to everyone in Deb's email a day or two ago. On the revenue side, recognizing that we're now 9 months into the town's fiscal year, or 75%, we're doing fine. What I would like to point out is payment in lieu of taxes looks like it's slow, and it really ties to payment due from St. Methodius, and there are discussions ongoing with them. And then there are a number of places where the revenues look low, particularly coming from the state, and that's simply timing issues. Under the account 3359, other from state, that includes the different COVID grants, which have been a lifesaver for us, let's say. And when you look at that, you'll see that the grants, COVID grants, were totaled about 184,000 so far out of that 239. I believe the balance was municipal aid. If you compare the 184,000 there with what we'll get when we get to the expense side, the emergency management, there's only 77 reported there. And that's because there were other expenses incurred under the departments that have not been segregated out for purposes. But in terms of the defense, the information we had to provide to the federal government to support the dollars we've received, we've supported something in the range of 600,000. So we're not afraid we're going to have to give any money back. I guess on the expense side, that's as much as I would plan to explain. On the revenue side. On the expense side, again, we're doing okay. Cemeteries is running high, but the cemetery has their own funds, and they will be reimbursing us by roughly 26,000 out of their trust funds. And that's for professional services they've incurred. And then there's the emergency management that I previously mentioned, where 77,000 came out of grants that was booked directly to that account. And there's other accounts that have incurred costs also. We're also anticipating receiving additional funding for elections for COVID-related expenses. And I think, Neil, if you could correct me, it's $20,000 to $25,000 in that ballpark?
It's 17.
So, okay, thank you. So that's just a quick overview. I don't know, Neil, if you want to add anything, or I'll just ask for any questions.
I just note that the municipal aid that was received last year, and it was a 2-year thing because of the surplus of the state budget. Last year we received 49,301. This year, based on the formula, that actually dropped. We were expecting the same, but we received 46,406. So it's just $2,900 less. So that it's not a huge drop, but it was smaller than we expected.
Thank you. Okay, with that, are there any questions?
I just have a quick question, Ken. On the what is the building department ambulance fee of like $450 on the first slide? It's 3401.
I believe some of that is just fees for filing for putting up a new house or something, and then ambulance fees that say for Warner or Webster, or I believe from the the system that we use for regional calls that we would be getting insurance reimbursement through.
Why are those listed together and not separately?
Yeah.
I,
different things.
I would think that there's no problem. We could separate them out. Neil, do you see any problem in going with separate accounts?
They are separate in the detailed account, and we can certainly do that there. We use the state recommended chart of accounts. So all the 3401s are fees for services, which is why that ends up that way. But we can report that differently, which would make sense because it would be helpful to see the ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the only reason I asked to separate it out, because then I'm looking at the next slide, and the expense for the ambulance is like 723,000. It's like almost 10%. So I was just kind of curious to be able to get a sense of like what is, you know, the ambulance and costing us and generating for us.
Okay, a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, is there anything else?
Great, thanks, Ken.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Humming right along here. Let's move on then to the, I'll just call it the CIP. I can't remember if the town uses that terminology or anything else.
Capital Reserve and Maintenance Trust Funds. Okay, and
Yes, that.
okay, I guess again, Neil, if you could put them up on screen share. Okay. And again, this was provided to you by Deb. You had actually seen almost all of this back last December. The only change, and why there's a new date reflected, is that we've put in the actual appropriations as finally approved at town meeting for 2020. In terms of the different items that potentially be purchased and the timing of those, none of that has been changed. And that's a process that certainly has not gotten to the select board or the capital improvement committee yet. You know, that's all to come. So my understanding is of why this is being provided is to simply be a refresher of you know, what you've seen before and the kind of detail that is provided by the town. I wasn't planning to go through these items, but again, myself or Neil can imagine answer any questions you might have, or maybe Dawn.
I just would invite, yeah, I can't see everybody when we're in screen sharing mode. Okay, thank you. And it's impossible to actually read that spreadsheet. You know, so it's hard enough to read it even when I blow it up on my computer. So Janet, I see you now, and then Jonathan after Janet.
Is it possible to get the agenda and this type of information out a little bit more than we received them this time? Because if we want to study something like this, it takes time, and you know, we don't always have the time to do it within a day or so. So is it possible to do that?
Yes, well, it's certainly possible to get the agenda out in further advance, and I'm sorry that it's come out so late the last couple of meetings. So I have actually blocked in my calendar going forward my hope and intention to get the agenda out more promptly. And of course, that then triggers the, I mean, what I've done is gone to the town and the school to confirm that they're able to present this stuff, and then it will be on, you know, based on their ability to to get the materials out. But I accept responsibility for the late agendas, and then that's has caused the town and the school to, I think, come in a little bit late. We'll try to get it out with more advance notice going forward.
Thank you.
And we can put this back on the agenda for our meeting next month, Janet, if we want to have further conversations so that people.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Jonathan, I think you're up.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure I sort of understood what I was looking at. And so I'm looking at, under the police, the cruiser replacement, and reading across, it looks like it's like 35,000 2020, 36,000 2021, 37, 38, goes up to 40,000 2025. Is that, does that mean that's the amount of money each year that we're trying to set aside for cruiser replacements? Is that, like, are we, somebody could just clarify sort of how to read this?
Sure.
Okay, Jonathan, if you're looking at the cruiser replacements, that's, as I understand it, the cost for the purchase of a new cruiser.
And so that's broken out. So each year, so when you have 35,000 in 2020, 36,000 in 2021, that means that we're appropriating 35,000 in 2020, and then another 36,000 in 2021, and presumably that's because of how expensive the cruisers are. Is that
we would be spending 35,000 and we'd be appropriate. The appropriation is about 3 lines up on the spreadsheet.
3 lines up? That's 27,000.
Right.
So this is really a fund flow worksheet that I use to keep track of amounts that are in the fund and what you need to put in the fund through that. So all the expenses are the red negative numbers each year, and the top line in each fund is the estimated appropriation.
So maybe, can I just follow up on Jonathan's question? Does that mean we're spending $35,000 on a cruiser replacement in 2020, and then we're spending $36,000 on a cruiser replacement in 21, and $37,000? Are we buying a new cruiser every year? Or, like, I don't understand.
We do. In this case, yes. Most years, and then there's an occasional skip if we don't need one. But yes, we buy a cruiser. We have 4 cruisers, and they get replaced one a year. They get replaced in about 100,000 miles.
Okay, so they basically have a 4-year lifespan or whatever for the cruisers.
Right.
Okay, I think that Jonathan, you got clarity there on what you're
Yeah,
asking?
I just wanted to understand how to read that line.
Okay.
Moving out. And the cost of a cruiser, presumably you're adding 1,000 each year because the cost goes up, and you're anticipating that.
Right. And when this gets updated this year, those numbers may change to be more accurately reflect the new information we have this year.
Okay, thank you.
My guess is the costs aren't going to go down on a police cruiser. Okay. Are there questions for Ken or Neil? You can wave or raise your hand on the Thomas.
Yeah, sorry, couldn't find the raise hand button. So this fund, is this funded through the actual budget, or this goes into a separate warrant that's voted every year, correct? Like this is like another thing that gets voted on separate than the budget?
Correct.
Okay, cool. And then the current amount that's in here for like the next X number of years, is this currently being funded at this level? Like the amount that's in there now, was that voted on and passed last year? Like is this, or is this like what, an ideal case that will likely get cut back?
What would be appropriated in an account would only be used for that particular account, say the police cruisers. And
Sorry,
it carries over.
to rephrase, in previous history, has the amount that's been put on, like, has the amount that's been put forth into the warrant articles generally been approved, or has it been generally reduced at the town meeting?
At town meeting itself, I'd say, no, it has not been reduced. I think every year that I've been on the select board, what has originally been proposed by our department heads has been reduced. And Don can speak for his committee also looks into it and makes their proposed adjustments.
I guess, sorry, I didn't want to say this question is, I guess, like, so let's just choose 2024, for example. There's a capital amount in 2024 of $1,062,000. Is it very likely that that is actually the amount that will get passed in that year, or is it likely that that will get reduced by the select board and then passed by the town, or is it likely that that's the number that's going to get put forward and then that will get reduced by the town at the meeting?
I would say it's very unlikely that that particular number will show up anywhere. It'll.
Okay.
Generally, this is my 13th time going through this here. We have a good plan, and it has not been funded fully any of those 13 years. And I think the select board generally cuts what the CIP recommends. CIP doesn't necessarily cut. Their job isn't to look at what's being expended as much as it's to look at how to fund those things. So, and never in those years has the town meeting cut the request to either capital reserve or maintenance.
Got it. And then in terms of how much the select board usually cuts it by, do you have a general feel for, is it like 5%, 10%, 20%?
I would say it sort of goes item by item.
Goes item by item.
Certainly, this particular go-round, there was a significant amount of cutting so we could get down to a flat tax rate.
Got it. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to get a good feel for, if there's a number that's on this sheet 10 years out, how likely is it to actually be that number, or how likely is it to be some change in that? So that helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
The CIP statute is for 6 years, and I like to do 20 because fire trucks are beyond that. So I would say it's much more accurate for the first 6 years. Then it's really sort of planning the best that we know, and it's updated every year. But I would say the first 6 years are kind of, except for the items that have more flexibility, we've been really good about equipment, but probably buildings and things like that, we haven't been as good about funding because there's more flexibility in there. When push comes to shove, it all depends on where the bottom line comes out, how much stays and how much goes.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thank you.
Do you know, just to build off of that line of questioning, Neil or Ken, so if year over year, understandably, the select board is reducing the amount that is put forward through the CIP, they're not fully proposing those full amounts to the town because they're trying to balance all the considerations. Are there certain areas in the CIP that are perpetually underfunded? Like you mentioned, maybe building maintenance, Neil, is one possible example. And then is that underfunding then being essentially added to the future years CIP projection, or is it just, do those amounts go up in future years, or is it more just get added out in year 20? I'm trying to get at, like, what's the implications of the chronic underfunding?
Very rarely are things able to be removed. They're just kind of kicked down the road. So yes, I think cuts that happen in 1 year have to be borne in future years. Do you think that's fair, Ken? I think that's.
Yes, I was going to say that, another thing is roads. And which comes under, loans at this point, and that has been kicked down the road. And we lately been starting to try to address the backlog there.
It's also really interesting to seeing that capital fund number put next to the bond payment number, because it feels like if there are things that could get kicked down the road, one way to make up for it at a future point is to then go into a bond program.
Right, which is what we're doing with roads. Not enough, but we're doing some of it. Don?
Yeah, I would say the only item on here, I've been sitting on the CIP for a number of years, is the road issue. That's the only one that has been underfunded and is really in trouble. And it's a monster number. But all the others have pretty much been put in place and are adhered to. The fire truck replacements, the police, all the other items.
I would say, because I'm sitting here, the town hall renovation has been pushed off. That started that work in 2000, so it's been 20 years that's been in process, and we've done some funding, but that's certainly been cut, I think, pretty much every year.
Yeah, and another item we're going to have to address sooner as opposed to later is the Houston barn.
There's nothing personal there, remember?
Unless Don wants to pay for it. Get up on the roof and fix it.
Been there and done that.
Currently, we have the roof replacement scheduled for 2021. So in this plan, we'll see, but it is it's going to need to be replaced if we're going to maintain the barn.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Jonathan, you are up.
Sorry, thanks. Just going back to this reading across, I'm seeing about $25,000 a year, and then it goes up for radios, like police portable radios, fire portable radios, fire mobile radios. That totals up to around 25 grand in 2020, and then again, it just goes every single year, and it keeps going up. The radios, are we buying radios like every year at that? Are we spending that much money on radios every single year?
Yes, they're not the same radios, because like the fire portable, we have 23 portable radios and 11 mobile radios, and we have between police and fire 2 base stations. We have 7 portable radios for the police department. And they run $3,000 to $5,000 a piece. So most of the radios we've had, the reason they started this fund is after 9/11, there was a federal grant. And so all the radios were upgraded to interoperable radios. But that means they all start to fail about the same time. So we're trying to get them and have pretty much gotten them on a schedule, so many are replaced each year. And that gets adjusted every year because they don't get replaced unless they have to. So sometimes they last. I think probably most of our older radios have far outlasted what they say the useful life is. So, and sometimes they can be moved to a less critical area. Certainly you don't want a firefighter going into a building with a radio that's questionable, but maybe the person on the truck could be using that because they have a backup there too or something.
Thank you.
Okay, other comments or questions on the town?
Are you asking Ken? Are you asking Ken or anyone?
I'm asking anyone.
Okay.
Yes, you're up.
I have a question. I know a tremendous amount of work has gone into putting the area where you come out of George Park onto Kearsarge Street different than it was last year. and a lot's been done. It's been filled in, so there's parking and everything else. And I would like to know, maybe next week, not next week, I'm sorry, next month, how much was spent, how much the town paid, and how much the school paid of that.
Okay, Neil, was the town's portion something in the 10 to 20,000 range?
Yeah, it was under 20,000, and I believe the schools was between 15 and 20. The school paid for all the drainage portion coming off their parking lot because that's their land. The road coming in up till there is town property, so the town did the road section. And so it was a joint, I'd have to get the exact numbers, but it's about in that range.
Yeah, I know it was a joint, but a lot of money was spent on that. And just would like to know what the amount was for the school and how much the amount was for the town, please.
So Norm and Ken, are you willing to provide those exact numbers for our next meeting?
Sure, I see Neil already writing it down.
I did write it down. So I'll remind him.
Thanks, Norm, and thank you, Neil.
You got it.
Great. Anything further for Ken or Neil? Or any member of the committee? All right, Neil.
I think I'm gonna
Floor
read
time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Yes, thank you, Neil. Enjoy dinner.
I will. Chicken Caesar salad. I just got a message.
That's what I had for lunch. Okay, I had built into the agenda a public comment period here, but I don't see any attendees. So, but I do want, Tammy, because you had put your hand up before, I do want to give you a chance if now is an appropriate time for whatever you had on your mind.
No, I just was continuing with the calendar itself, just to make sure that enough time was built in, because I saw the continuation going down the line. Nothing for public.
Okay. Then we are going to move to you, Norm, starting with the school district financials update, and then we'll bring in Jim, it sounds like, for the multi-year CIP conversation.
Yeah, so I have a little bit to discuss. Well, first, I wanted to say to you guys, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with the superintendent search firm. I appreciate the time of the budget committee. It was an additional meeting, and I valued your comments and your opinion for the firm. So I just wanted to say thank you to you all. Mark, I have the financials. I have a little bit of information regarding the budget information, like driving factors that we talked about. That's big ticket items I want to discuss before I turn over to Jim, which I want to thank him for coming today to share the CIP portion of this. And I have some information just to discuss a little bit of the bond project that I sent over to you guys. If you guys had any questions about that I could help. So most important thing, is the financials. It's very skinny because we had just approved our budget back in August. So we have only about 2 weeks showing on there right now of information. So this is part where I'm going to get off the hook a little bit with questions, and I'll be hammered with more questions when there's more data in our reports. But most important thing to share based on the report that we can see is that we received quite a bit of our funding already in the month of August, as opposed to last year, it was received in September. So we received at the end of the month of August instead of September, which was almost $900,000 more when you guys look at the total income for revenue. We are gonna have an issue with our food services. I shouldn't say issues, but we're gonna be projected to lose about $140,000 due to being on remote for the school district. It's something that we're planning, and it's something that is something we're gonna have to overcome moving forward. Just want to bring that to your attention. That's on the financials that Michelle has prepared for us. We have spent about $58,000 of PPE already. Of course, the board had put $40,000 aside last year, set aside for that. And we also have the CARES grant, which we were allotted about $40,000 of there. So there's not a whole lot more importance to share for this other than what you guys have seen. I'm open to any questions on any line item that I can try to answer. And if I don't really answer, I'll gladly come back with your question like I did last time for anyone. But we'll see a significant financials next month. The board receives the report tomorrow night to discuss, which will include September financials, which we'll have for November. So I'm open to any questions regarding the financials. There's not a whole lot that has been covered over the first 2 weeks, but I'm happy to answer anything.
Great. Who's got questions for Norm? Just giving everyone a chance to take a quick peek, Norm. So
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, everyone okay with Norm moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Carry on.
All right, well, thank you guys for that. So in the last month, Rob and I and the Finance Committee has met about 4 times to discuss the project moving forward, our future budget. You know, there's a lot of important information we have to gather in order to put this budget together. And what's very unique about this year's board, I'm very happy that this board has decided to have a Finance Committee and a CIP committee. You know, each board member has its toes in part of this budget process, so we all come together and working together. And I think that's very important as a school board, that we're all doing our part in order to present this town with a budget. And what's unique about this year is that there is driving factors of big ticket items that we need to look at immediately. That's important when it comes to incorporating our future budget for this district. On the revenue side, to bear the bad news to the budget committee, of course, we have to look at less revenue of $641,000. We have talked about that in the past, that was something that was a one-time revenue that we are likely not to get this year because the budgets, hopefully we pass once this whole governor race thing is over, then hopefully we'll be allotted something. But as of right now, we are planning for a $641,000 shortage, which is about, if I'm calculating right, 84 cents on the tax rate. You know, that's short. One thing that is important, that actually plays an important part now, is that enrollment is going down. And that could be that some students are homeschooled. And that number, from my understanding, is about 30 students. And you take 30 students and you take it at $3,800 per student, that's quite a bit of revenue that we're not receiving. So you're looking at about $120,000 with the shortage of less students in the schools. On the expense side for the school, of course, is our bond. And one thing that I want to try and bring to the budget committee each meeting is the breakdown of where we are with the facilities project. You know, I'm happy to say that the facilities project has been going great. It's been exceeding the expectations of the community that was agreed upon, with 4 classrooms, fire suppression, and most importantly, a less of a tax impact. When Steve presented this to the community back in 19, I believe the tax impact was a 104. And currently, what we have presented and projected is a tax impact of 80 cents moving forward. But right now, for this budget, it's a little tricky to explain, but I'm going to do my best. But this year, for the budget we're in right now, the tax impact was 10 cents. Next year, when we buy a portion of the bond and do a full year payment on the current bond that we're in, it's about a total of 38 cents. Then in the year after that, moving forward, we will have the complete bond package. So our anticipated bond rate will be 80 cents moving forward, which is a big ticket for this town. I understand that, but it's definitely 24 cents less than what was promised at the district meeting, which I think is a great thing to say, that we're getting a good investment at a lower rate, and also completing projects for the school district that makes our facilities a lot better and protecting it. I think that, you know, as a school board member, I think is great that we're able to do that. Another driving factor that's important, that every other year, the school district is required to pay into teachers retirement, which is a state law. We are going to be doing that this year. I do not have the exact number. Steve will be presenting that shortly. So that's a required amount that will be required for us to pay in. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. Every 2 years, the school district has to pay in a portion of retirement for our teachers. We know we have our standard health insurance increase, which is always a driving factor. We talked about the bond. We also have to understand that we are operating with an unknown. We do not know what's going to happen next year with a lot of things. You know, we could be operating like this for 6 to 7 months, where we have to continuously have to buy, you know, PPE, whatever it is, in order to provide a safe environment for our teachers, for our students. That is something when planning this budget as a board, we have to look at the uncertainty moving forward. I'm pleased to say that this board is working together, trying to develop a new presentation on the budget, which Rob and I will be presenting tomorrow night to the school board, to give a little bit of an overview of how we can share information with the community that they've been asking for. A one-step process to, I think, something that this community has been asking for, that I think will be a little more upfront, where you guys can see increases in a subject at a location, so you can see where increases are in salary, in supplies, compared year after year. So that will be at the board table tomorrow, so the board can discuss and have some questions and determine if they want to see something different. You know, we operate in public. You know, I think Michelle, Steve, and Rob, you know, for the last 4 meetings, we wanted to dissect the budget and how a budget is created, how it goes through multiple channels. And quite frankly, it's helped me as a better board member to understand, you know, how state aid works, how a lot of this gets together at the end of the day. So for me tonight to discuss with you, the most important driving factor for this budget that we have to be concerned about is the reduction of revenue of the fund of 641,000. That is a very important number. Also, the enrollment going down is another big concern, I think, for anyone. And then, of course, I sent you guys a bond schedule of what a bond looks like right now after it has been auctioned off, which I learned a little bit more today about how auctions are done and how people can pay down a bond with $500,000 in order to have it for an investment on their part. And then, of course, the CIP committee, they have been working to develop a plan in order to plan for the future and to determine a recommendation to the finance committee in order to plan for the budget moving forward. So it's a lot of information, I understand that, but I just wanted to let you know we've been working hard early in the budget process in order to put everything that we need to know that's outside the budget. What is fixed that's out of our control, that we are looking at before we even go towards that budget, you know, of looking what we need to do for the school district.
Great, thank you, Norm.
You're welcome.
Is there anything further that you were going to share before we go to the school multi-year CIP?
No, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update. That's where I am right now. With sharing with you guys. There's any questions on this part, I'm happy to answer it.
Any
I have
questions?
a
Yeah, go ahead,
question.
Janet.
Yeah.
Sorry. You talked about the bond and saying it was 10 cents and then it jumped to 38. Was that in 20 or 21 or 22,
So 2021 will be 10 cents.
right?
And then 21-22 will be a total of, I believe, Janet, it's gonna be 38 cents because we're gonna be having one full bond payment and then a portion of the second bond that we're gonna be taking out.
Okay, thank you. I
And
just didn't get it.
Yeah, no, it's a little crazy, and the total impact will be, Steve mentioned 76 cents, but we had said in public 80 cents is what we had committed to the community at level debt. So the next couple of years is gonna be a little tricky because we have taken out the bond in different time frame to help out with our budget. Yeah, but good question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the decrease in enrollment.
Yeah,
In terms of how it affects us, and if you guys have any sense as to why that might be happening other than a crystal ball.
I might have a better answer for tomorrow night, Jonathan. We're gonna have our updated enrollment tomorrow. The enrollment I received from the last board meeting, my hunch could be because of people's concern with the pandemic that we're going through, that some students are not attending Hopkinton right now. That does affect us for revenue from the state, which is a concern when it comes to our budget. It's something that we have to look down the road to recuperate from somewhere.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Ken.
Mark, one of the things I know, the school hadn't made their mind up as to what they were going to do this year, if it was going to be remote or it was going to be in school and so forth. And some parents really needed to know ahead of time or as early as possible because of their own work schedule. And I know that didn't come through as early as some people wanted to. And I know 3 children that have gone into other schools because of that. The Catholic school in Concord apparently is doing more hands-on than remote. So 3 were, registered there.
Yeah,
So
I think that's true.
happened a lot.
Well, because the town voted down the school budget a couple of times, our administration and school board had a lot of time and attention this summer around getting us a budget that the voters would approve, and that really led to, I think, a long.
No, but I'm just saying that was a reason for it.
Any further? Ken.
Norm, if parents decide to have their child go fully remote, does the school still get the full payment from the state?
That is a great question. I asked that Steve today, and I think Tammy was there. How that works is it's a portion of how, are you talking about when they're fully enrolled and they decide to go remote?
Correct.
It's my understanding, yes, they're still counted because they're still using our remote, our teachers and stuff. It's the homeschool school students that are not using our school students, our services with the district. There's some parents. There's people who, like Janet said, go to St. John's or something like that.
Jonathan.
And just one more. What is we hired a firm to help us with the superintendent search, right?
Yes.
What is that costing us?
Great question, Jonathan. The projected cost is $15,000. for the search, and there will be an additional cost that has not been associated yet with our marketing expense for that. They had a bunch of tiers that was presented to the board on where we wanted to post the information to recruiting a superintendent. I think it ranged between, I think, $3,100, but I have not seen an approval yet on that. It was presented to us of what could possibly be used to reach out for outsources for the superintendent. But 15,000 of what was quoted for us for the firm.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else for Norm before we move over to Jim for the school CIP? If not, okay.
Thank you guys
Mr.
very much.
O'Brien.
Well, thanks for having me back. So I'm going to do is a very brief presentation and then walk through some of the spreadsheets. And I'm pretty sure you guys probably didn't get sent this stuff in advance, but maybe you did. It's up on our website. But I thought what I'd do is walk you through, because you probably haven't seen, this is new for the district, so you probably haven't seen a lot of this. As Norman mentioned, you know, one of the first things that we did, one of the first things the new board did was to establish two committees. One was the finance committee that Norm is on and talked a lot about. And then the other one was a capital improvement committee. And, you know, sort of long range capital planning is something that the district, I think, has done as more of an ad hoc basis than a really, really kind of dived into. So this is really an attempt for the board and then for the administration to start pulling together a longer term plan. So just a little bit of background. So our school district has about 158,000 square feet of properties to manage. You know, we have 3 schools. We have an SAU building. We have grounds associated with those buildings. You know, and if you just think about the activity of a school, you know, we have thousands of 1,000 students coming and going. We have hundreds of staff who make use of these buildings. We have a lot of volunteers and community members. And so, you know, the wear and tear on our facilities is real and it happens often. And so as we think about the capital improvement plan, you know, we're utilizing the, I guess, definition that the town CIP committee uses for what we consider to be capital projects, which is you know, cost of at least $10,000, you know, a useful lifespan of 5 years is a non-reoccurring item, and then any project requiring bond funding. And so if items don't fit into these descriptions, those are items that go into our budget, our annual budget. The only one that's not yet in here, and it's something I think the CIP committee is going to continue to talk about, is what to do with some of our technology items. You know, some of our larger computer purchases, our servers. Right, currently those are included in our budget, operating budget, and we're having a conversation whether or not some of those should be brought into the CIP over time. And so the district has an account. Right now it's called the School District Building Repair and Maintenance Fund. The name was changed at the 2019 district meeting. Before it was just, I think it was the school building. And so the town approved the expansion of that to the school district, which really means that it incorporates the SAU building into the maintenance fund. And at that time, you know, the board used this account. So if you look, you know, FY 13, 14, 15, you know, this account was really used more for known large purchases rather than sort of an ongoing CIP program. You know, I think what Ken shared is a great example of, you know, a long-term CIP program in which investments are made, appropriations are tracked. The district in the past had used it more for, we knew that there was a large expenditure coming, asked the town to put money in. So it was more money in, money out on a given year rather than sort of a longer term plan. And so this is just really shows, you know, sort of over time how these dollars have come in. I think starting in FY20, you know, the board made a real effort and a real commitment to trying to fund this at a consistent level. in order to sort of grow the pot for more of a long-term program. And so before I sort of jump into into showing the spreadsheet, just some general thoughts on what we're trying to do. You know, I think the first item is what I just talked about. I think the board's committed to, you know, try to maintain a consistent level of funding. I think it's fair to say in the past that a lot of work from the school board has been to fund our programs, funding our staff, funding personnel, and really less attention on sort of facility maintenance and facility planning. That's changed, and that's really changed, I think, when the district started to undergo the building project. You know, before the bond vote, years before, there was a lot of research studies being done on our facilities, and I think the decision to defer a lot of that maintenance was really kind of came out in a lot of those studies, that the district really needed to spend more money, more time thinking about the long-term planning for our facility, and make sure that we're not falling behind in maintenance. And so, you know, there is an intersection with the building project. You know, the building project it didn't remove all the maintenance, but it did take some of that maintenance and put it into a bond. And then, you know, as we move through the bonding project, some of the items on our spreadsheet as we look at building, the building may end up being an alt add into the building project. So some of the items may get taken up into the building project if we have some savings and there's additional items left. We're not really counting on that, but as we go through some of these, there is intersection with the building project. And then, you know, over the years, the district has used fund balance to cover some of our capital items and capital projects. And that continued. Like this year, we had last fiscal year, this calendar year, but last fiscal year, we had some additional fund balance that we used to purchase a bunch of Chromebooks, you know, on the technology side. And so as we have fund balance and the board has conversations on how to apply that, you know, these capital items are definitely on our list for things to fund. And then, you know, this is a living document, very much so, and you'll see that in a minute when I talk a little bit about this year, because things in buildings tend to break. And sometimes things in buildings tend to break when you haven't planned for them to break or to run down and need to be replaced. And so, you know, we use this, and I know Steve and Michelle use this document. It gets updated a lot, especially as new information comes to us on our large buildings and the needs of those buildings. And then we also know, because of our staffing, that there really is a limited number of projects that the district can manage over the course of a year. So we could put a whole bunch more money into these funds, but they're really, we don't have a lot of project managers to manage a lot of these projects. So, you know, with the large capital items, we really try to think about how to space these projects out and who's going to manage them and what time of year those are best managed for. Again, if you're trying to replace roofs and the kids are in school, that's a challenge. And so some of these items need to be done in the summer or off, I guess, off school time, which also complicates, you know, how many projects that we can manage in a year. And then the last piece is just transparency. You know, this is a living document. As I mentioned, this is up on our website. You can go and find this. Anybody can look at it. They could see what our expenditures are this year, how much we spent. And then we also, the board and Steve and Michelle have over the years and continue to commit that whenever we expend dollars out of the school district building maintenance and repair fund, that we hold a public hearing. And so we actually have a public hearing on Thursday so that, you know, we can talk about what the expenditures are, what the costs are, answer any questions that the public has before we expend those resources. So with all that said, I'm now going to, where is it? Here it is. I'm not going to walk through all the items, but I just kind of want to show you how we prepare this. Can you guys see the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay, nodding, perfect. So it's a little busy. But down here at the bottom, we have tabs for all of the individual buildings. And so we have a Harold Martin tab, so you can go in and see what's going on with the Harold Martin facility, and then any notes associated with it. We have that for each building. Then we have one that sort of combines all those separate tabs into sort of the maintenance trust account. So this top line is the appropriation. So in FY20 and FY21, there was a town meeting vote. It's on a separate warrant than the budget of about $140,000. And if you scroll down through this spreadsheet, you'll see that each of the buildings have those items which sort of meet the criteria of the CIP, the at least 5-year lifespan, the $10,000 or more. And so Steve and Michelle, our maintenance staff, our facility director, have gone through all of our buildings, taken note of what all those items are, the lifespan of those items, and have begun to sort of map them out on this sheet. It should have started. But I mean, this is a work in progress. I say it's a living document and it's a work in progress document. This is maybe the second year that we've really been digging into the CIP in this sort of way. And so we're learning more as we go. We're finding things that, maybe we thought the lifespan was a little bit longer than it was, and we're having to plug it in here. Some of them are very old, and we're trying to get updated numbers so we can plug it into the spreadsheet with more updated, realistic numbers. And so, Steve and Michelle are doing a ton of work on this. It's come a long way, and there's still, I think, a little bit of ways to go. And as I mentioned, we do this item here, as I said, is a living document. So when we we're planning coming back to school for our hybrid model, one of the things that we needed to do was to test the airflow, the air quality in all of our school buildings. And so we purchased this device that monitors airflow at the vents. And we did that for every classroom and every public space in the building to make sure that we had adequate airflow, or if we had to adjust the HVAC system. And so we found some spaces that either didn't have adequate airflow, in which we worked with our HVAC system to fix those and to remedy those situations. And then we actually found some spaces in our schools that had actually no ventilation and no airflow associated with it. One of those rooms is our preschool room, which I think surprised some people and didn't make anybody happy. So that room has not been used because it's not safe. So we wanted to fix that. And so as you can see, we have a bid for $18,000 for the recovery ventilation system. That will be project managed by BPS, who is our general, they're not general contractor, our construction management firm, who's working on our building. But that's just an example of how we would use the CIP as a living document to fund a need that we currently know we have. We'll have a public hearing on Thursday to explain the situation, ask for comments before we move forward. So again, this is true of all the buildings. We have the list, and then we get to the bottom. We have the total expenditures for the year. So in FY21, you can see the number here, which gives us at the end of the fiscal year how much we have left in that account, which then gets, it's a non-lapsing account. So then next year we start with that as a balance and we add to it. So as you can see in FY22, we're just starting the planning for FY22. And so as the town does as well, the department heads, the building principals, our maintenance staff, Steve and Michelle, put projects in here that the board will discuss and vote on as we move through our budget process. And so the numbers that you see here under FY22, quite a bit larger with a deficit at the end. That's not going to stand. I mean, that's not where we're going to end up. The board hasn't really reviewed FY22 planning. That's part of the budget process that will come to us as we move forward. And then the only thing I really like what Steve does is he color codes this. And so if you go back in previous years, or in this year, you could see the meeting where the items have had the public hearing and have been approved. And then, Steve and Michelle are both pretty cautious and conservative planners. You'll see a lot of projects end up in the second half or even the last quarter of the fiscal year before we pull the trigger on a lot of those items to make sure that we don't have any more of those preschool rooms that need something immediate fix, that we have money in the account in order to accommodate any unexpected items that may occur. So I think that's all I had to prepare. What I'm happy to do is ensure that you guys all get the link to this document, so you can review it, in between meetings. I'm happy to come back, but this is part of our overall budget process, which will, probably in the next month or two, the board will probably start digging into this more and tackling. And then we'll be going to the CIP committee that I know Don sits on, for them to take a look at this and really dig into it more before we then bring it back as part of our overall budget package. My hope, again, as only one board member, my hope is that we don't go backwards on this account, that, you see here in FY19, we allocated nothing and then we jumped up to 140. To me, that's sort of the baseline. I don't want to see us going back on this account. We've seen, what sort of deferred maintenance, what happens with deferred maintenance and how quickly it catches up to you. My hope is that we can at least keep what we've put in for the last couple of years as sort of a base, and then look to what we need to do in future years to grow that pot in order to, in order to keep our facilities in a way that we want our kids to be in school with those facilities and not have outdated. And now that we're spending $10 million on the capital project, we want to make sure that those investments are upkept over time, and that the district doesn't have to start, to choose between programs and staff in our facilities. We need all of those, and so we feel that the CIP in this account specifically enables us to plan for the future, so that we're not making those types of choices as we move forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer or try to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Jim. That was fantastic. Don, I feel like you should be doing backflips. You've been asking for, I've been on the budget committee for 5 years, and you've been asking for this for 5 years.
I'm a very happy person to see this kind of work. It's fantastic, Jim. Congratulate the school board. Yes, we've been asking this for many, many years, and it should help get the big picture out. Thank you.
Yeah, and I really want to thank and just highlight, Michelle and Steve and Jay Burgess. And I know when this was, when I was bringing back news from the budget committee, my first year on the board, that was, Steve really took it to heart that this was, this was a top priority. He worked with Jay Burgess to really, really get better understanding of how to put this together. And he and Michelle have really grabbed hold of this and are doing a lot of the right planning here. So kudos to them.
Great, I've got Norm and then Thomas.
Just a quick comment, Jim. I just want to say thank you for the presentation. Just one thing to add on is, Jim nailed it very perfectly that, we want to maintain the facilities, and that's extremely important. And, one thing that's important to share is that once this facility project is done, HL Turner will provide us with a CIP plan of what they've done. So we'll have an idea of the longevity of our roofs, of what they're doing, and then incorporate some capacity into the CIP. So I just wanted to share that once this project is done, they will return some numbers to us so we can plug into the CIP and forward over to them.
Thanks, Norm. All right, Thomas, you are up next.
Cool, thanks. So in terms of the special ed trust, is that funded as a separate warrant article, or is that like as part of the batch of CIP funds that then get separated out into special education funds?
Yeah, thanks. So the special education trust is a separate warrant, and okay. So that comes separately. There's a tab for it here because I think Steve includes it in our trust fund, but it's separate. And our goal, I believe, was to try to maintain, you know, $150,000, $170,000 in that trust account. And so I know last year we had a $40,000 warrant expenditure or warrant article to put the funds in there that we had to spend. So that's sort of our planning tool for special ed.
Got it. Cool. Thanks. And then in terms of the actual amount that you're looking to start proposing moving forward, it looked like there's like 3 different numbers. So I wasn't sure. There's like in the bar graph, it looked like you were starting with about 140,000, but then there's like the 3% maintenance amount, which would be about 1.4 million. But then in terms of the actual line items for like 2020, it looked like there's somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1.2 million that would be needed for like the 2020 to 2022 area. So what amount are you looking at actually starting for warrant articles?
Yeah, I don't want to kick the can or not answer your question, but I think that's probably what I'm going to. And I say that only because you know because we haven't really, the board hasn't seen this or discussed it or for future years or really like dived into it that deeply. And so I don't want to throw what number. I have a number in my head what Jim O'Brien would like, but I don't always get my way. So I think there's that, and then there's also you know, this comes into the context of our overall you know, tax rate. What's going to happen with our tax rate, and just like the town, you know, I think that the department heads and Neil come forward with a number, and then you know, the board or the select board looks at what's the top priority, what needs to be funded now, what can be deferred a couple of years. And so my assumption is that the school board will have similar conversations as we start to map out what the next 2 or 3 years look like, how that relates to our overall tax rate impact that we're bringing forward to the town. But I do think, at least what I hope, I will say this, but I hope the board won't go backwards, that we won't decrease from the 140 level that we're currently at. That will at least maintain that, and then my hope is that we can add more. But again, it's sort of a longer conversation with the full board.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, going off of that, I think that, you know, like on first sight, there's that 3% number, which turns out to be like the 1.4 million. And I think on first sight, a 1.4 million number looks really, really high. But both in terms of how much it represents in terms of the value of what needs to be maintained, and then also in terms of the percentage of the actual school budget, it's very low. So I think, you know, trying to get up to a much higher, more reasonable, kind of feasible going in the future, even though it might look really high initially, it'll definitely help stop kind of these large jumps into $10 million, $20 million bonded projects that then become really big challenges.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And, you know, and when I talk to Steve and Michelle about this, I mean, I'm only sort of repeating what I hear, but it makes sense to me. I mean, at some our district, because of I think our small administration, there's only so much that we can handle in terms of contracts. So I'd say even if we had $1 million to spend, it may be a challenge for us to actually execute on all that, just because we don't have the manpower to manage anything. So there is a balance between, you know, all the projects that we would love to do, and what the timeline is, and then what are the projects that we can actually manage and get done. And so, you know, so that's a reality, and that I think, you know, as our those who manage those projects look at this account and look at what's on tap, I do think some of those are realistic decisions that, you know, we have to sort of pace ourselves in the right way in order to get the work done we need to do, but not overextend what we promised the community that we can do with the maintenance trust account.
You know, it strikes me, Jim, that I think you're going in the right direction. And this next budget cycle is going to be really tough to keep going in the right direction, because you've got the perfect storm of the bond payment coming online, the potential loss or the likely loss of the one-time state, you know, aid. And I think there's going to be a lot of, so I guess a couple of thoughts. There's just going to be a pretty big demand on the school board, I think, to communicate about really, I think, a change in approach, which is put more money in on an annual basis so that we don't have these whopper bonds every 10 to 15 years. And that has already started, that communication, but I think it's going to be particularly important because I could see this getting stripped out or stripped down over the course of the budget process, which is not going to help us. But there's going to be so much pressure on this budget. So I just think it's going to require a lot of proactive communication and on the part of the school board, and including here at the budget committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, and then I have just like another sort of idea.
No, I think it's a really good point, and I do think, especially, I mean, how many people go and watch our finance committees or our CIP committee meetings? Probably not very many, but what it does is Norm had stated, I think for us as board members, it gives us an opportunity to, I think, communicate amongst ourselves what it is that we're planning on doing, and then I hopefully over time will translate to better communication out into the community. And then I just hope, as we get into the budget process and the budget committee understands, what we're trying to do here with the CIP, that, your support over time will be very crucial, I think, to some of that communication as well. So, but point made, I appreciate it.
Let me invite further comments or questions from the budget committee members. Wave your hand or raise your hand on the panel. Jonathan.
Just one specific question. I saw projected out in 2023, the boiler at Harold Martin was like 140,000. It's like almost the whole amount. Is that, you guys feel pretty, that's pretty likely that hit would be coming that quickly?
You've asked a question that I know nothing about, and so I'll have to get back to you on that.
I win a Swedish fish.
If we were only in the room together, Jonathan, we'd be coming your way.
Dare to dream.
So Jonathan, I'll get that information. I have Norm bring it to the next meeting.
That just prompts me, Jim, to ask, I think this has happened, but when the buildings committee or the facilities committee is looking at something like replacing a boiler, are they taking a hard look at the possibility of replacing it with, going from, I don't know what it is now, I assume it's oil, but going to wood pellets or other more renewable sources of fuel, and, the associated potential credits or other kinds of state incentives that might help offset the cost?
Yeah, so at Maple Street School, if you go behind the building, you see that there's a wood pellet burner with the silo, and so when we look at replacing our equipment, that is definitely a consideration. And then I know that at Harold Martin specifically, I think there was, maybe it was at the high school. I might get my schools, but I know when we did some of the analysis on a wood pellet system, because of where the boilers were, some of the configuration didn't work, and so, but it is something that we look at. And then there's been a group of students that have petitioned the board about over time trying to move the district to be 100% renewable, both in terms of our electricity usage, but then over a longer period of time on our building heating and cooling needs. And so that's something that the board's interested in. We have a committee that we're going to work on with in this high school to really try to start tackling that, to see how realistic it is, how we include it more into the CIP plan, because right now a lot of that's, well, none of that's really included in the CIP plan, and how we can make, what are those capital investments that we need to make if we're going to move in that direction? Where are they, and how much would they cost? So that's sort of that's very much a work in progress. But to your real question, when we do the engineering and site work, we are trying to figure out what is the what are our options and how do we utilize different forms of energy if we can.
Great, thanks so much for that.
The only other thing I want to mention, because I know it's been an issue, I sort of said it off the top when I talked about the changing of the name of the fund. We had some conversations at the board level, and I know Steve has talked a lot about it with his leadership team, just around how much do we want to invest in the SAU building. And so there are things, on this list. We aren't going to do another bond. We're not looking currently. There's no plans to do anything to the SAU building. But anybody who's been in the SAU building, I think can appreciate that it's not the best work environment for our staff. At some point, that will become something that the district will need to tackle. And so anyway, I only mention it because I do know there's, how much care and maintenance do we want to spend on the SAU building versus putting into other properties and other items that we have. That's an ongoing discussion, and that's we don't have I guess right now we don't have a good answer other than we have staff that work out of there, and it's a school facility, so we have to maintain it. But at some point, and I don't know when, it may not be when any of us are here, but I'm assuming there will be a project for the SAU. Don't know what it is, but it is something that I know we're looking at, like how much is too much in that current facility.
I'm glad you raised that, because I can imagine that the current state of that building is not helping us in our superintendent recruitment process. I mean, seriously, it's not a great place to work, and doesn't reflect well. And it's an easy one to kick the can down the road on, which is why it never gets funded, because it's not student-centered. But you can be sure candidates for this job are looking at that space or will look at that space.
Yeah, I agree. But it is what we have, and so we gotta at this point we gotta make the most of it and make it the best working environment we can. But it is very limited.
Other comments and questions for Jim? We'll let him go back to his dinner.
All right. Well, thanks for the invite. And then, if this comes back on the agenda, I'm happy to come back and talk about, where we are and decisions that we made sort of moving forward.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Many thanks, Jim. All right. We had a public comment period after this, but there is no public in attendance. So I'm going to move on to any other business to come before the board. And the one that I want to bring up is about our next meeting date. That was something that I put, Tammy, sorry.
Did you forget the two districts? Kentucky and Hopkinton.
Oh, I did. Forgive me. Sorry. Thank you.
I thought you went ahead for some reason.
He wants dinner.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, Don, you're up for the Kentucky precinct update. Please, no disrespect intended.
That's quite all right. Nothing really new. I believe August report. There's nothing really changed from the last one. Just a couple of interesting items that happened. We had a major break up on Park Avenue, which took out, the north side of Kentucky for a while with the water. That's been fixed, and the replacement of the pipe up at Linda Kimball's up at the Hopkinton Road reservoir. They're interviewing 3 people this week to get that project done. Hopefully it will still get done this year. We did find in the contract, we really do have another year if we need it to get that work accomplished, but would like to get it done this year. That's about a $90,000 project as forecasted. Other than that, I have nothing. Any questions?
Just one, Don. Do you know why we don't have fluoride in the town water?
I do not. I could get that answer for you.
Fair enough.
I do put some of my crystal light in here. You know, from the jug that I have a picture.
Anybody else for Don? Thanks, Don. Okay. Thomas, you're up for a Hopkinton Village Precinct update.
Yep. Really nothing major to update. Normal. All of our expenditures are on track, and they're all pretty minor, but no changes since last month.
All right. Thanks, Thomas. Any questions for Thomas? Okay. Great. Thank you, Tammy, for catching me, jumping the gun there. All right, so now we're going to move to any other business before the board. And I wanted to just bring up our next meeting date, which if we were to stick with the second Wednesday of the month would be November 11th, which is Veterans Day. That was raised last meeting as a preference to not meet on Veterans Day as a day to honor our veterans. And so I have talked to Neil, and based on when some other committees, et cetera, are meeting, he has suggested we just push back 1 week to Wednesday, November 18th. And so I have asked him to do that. So I want to just put that forward. If that creates a problem for any of you, that would be good to know now. I'm not sure we have another good option, but that would be good to understand now. Are we good? Not hearing any objections, then we are going to go ahead and do that. So next meeting will be on November 18th rather than November 11th. Hopefully there'll be fewer road signs at that time. Other business that people want to bring before the board. I can see all of you. Going once? Going twice? Okay, great. And I will do my very best to get an agenda out with further in advance next month, which hopefully will also enable any advanced materials to come out to you with more time for review.
Thank you.
So I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So be it.
Janet.
Ken making it and Janet seconding. I'll do a quick round robin. Janet?
Yep. Janet approves.
Jonathan?
Yes, please.
Don? Don?
You saying Don?
That's you.
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Steve?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yay.
And Norm?
Norm, yes.
Okay, and I am yes. Thank you, Tammy. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
Thank
Thank you, Mark.
Night. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.